Wooster Group's latest production, LSD, deals with the hysteria, ecstasy and paranoia of the 1960s. The group used a variety of real-life sources to make a kind of theatrical collage whose aim was to recreate the emotions and contradictions of that decade. One of the key sources was a record called LSD, containing speeches by Timothy Leary, the Harvard professor who became the drug guru of the 60s. His story runs throughout the performance.
We tell young people today, don't vote, don't go to school. All of our schools in this country, and I suspect in England and the Commonwealth as well, are paid for by middle-aged parents who want their children to become robots like them.
And I liked the tone of voice. I was interested in Leary's tone of voice. And I can't really say that there was anything more than that except that tone of voice. Now, in that tone of voice, I now see was much of what's in LSD at its completion.
Is the aim of education in England or the United States people Buddhas and to recognize their divinity? I don't think so. Drop out of school, because schools, education today, is the worst narcotic drug of all.
I was also interested in these people that had been around, you know, people like Alan Watts and Jack Kerouac and Ginsberg, men who had been writing when I was first coming into New York City from New Jersey when I was a teenager. But I had never been able to read their books. I'd always toss them down whenever I tried to read them and couldn't. So I forced myself to read them by having the actors read them to me. Part one of LSD.
Gentlemen, I ask that you, as you make your opening statements and you introduce your authors, that you contain yourselves to a period of time of 30 seconds. When you hear this tone, 30 seconds will have elapsed, and I ask that you discontinue your readings. Thank you.
I'm going to be reading from Naked Lunch by William Burroughs. It was a book that was on trial for pornography in Boston, so I feel it's my duty to try and find some selections that illustrate this. Since it wasn't found guilty, I'm sure you won't be bothered. This is the opening sentence of Naked Lunch. I can feel the heat closing in. Feel them out there making their moves, setting up their double-doll stool pigeons, crooning over my spoon and dropper I throw away at Washington Square Station, vault a turnstile, and 2 flights down the iron stairs, catch an uptown A train.
Now, next to Michael, we have a video monitor. On that monitor, we also have Michael Kirby. There was a time when we were using a video recording when Michael couldn't be with us. We chose to use it now because we enjoy it. And so on the monitor, we have Michael Kirby reading from Alan W. Watts, Nature, Man, and Woman. Notice he'll take off his hat when he does so. It indicates that he's reading from
Later on, I'll take off my hat. And then I'll be reading from Alan Watts.
Alan W. Watts.
Alan W. Watts, Nature, Man, and Woman. The first sentence of Nature, Man, and Woman is, when Christians first distinguished themselves from pagans, the word pagan meant country dweller.
Section 1 is the most satisfying solution I've ever seen in a theater to evoking an era in which they simply read at random a series of excerpts from books of the 60s. And in a very straightforward way, they announce to the audience, these are the ideas that are going to be in the air. This is the atmosphere, this is what we felt, this is what's believed.
December 1960, Dear Neil, Merry Christmas. Forgive my silence, I will write. Peter and I were up at Harvard visiting Leary last week, eating synthetic mushrooms. Very high, the revolution has begun. You are it now, the God. We're starting a plot to get everyone in power in America high. Hurrah.
We were coming back on this boat, says Jackie Leary. We were taking the cheapest boat, and we had the cheapest room on this freighter. It was right next to the engine room, and I was amazed, since I could hear the engines, and the 3 of us were packed into this tiny closet in there, and we hadn't been on the boat more than a couple of hours when it crashed onto a rock. We had to get off and come home on one of those old Constellations, one of those planes with the funny tails. Page 30. Ikimasho. Ron?